Little more on the Hunter Biden stuff in our DOJ. We have a pro-life activist tonight. We have some eye-popping stuff about COVID and COVID's origins. This is a really interesting show tonight, and I'm right. Give them bread and circuses, and they'll never revolt. You've heard that before, right? Most people have heard of that before. That's from a Roman poet. Don't worry about who it is. It's not important for our conversation here. But what is important is, what did he mean by that? We'll talk about the Hunter Biden stuff in a minute. Where's that going? Well, here's where it's going. The people, if the people are upset, or if the people are living under a corrupt system, and they know it's a corrupt system, you must placate them. You don't have to give them justice. You don't have to clean up the system. You don't have to change your ways. You don't have to do any of those things if you're in power. Find something to distract them. Find something to placate them, to calm them down. If they're angry, hungry masses are in front of you and they say, "We're starving," just show up with a wagon and toss out some loaves of bread, and they'll go from being angry to thanking you. "Wow, you were so generous. Thanks for the free bread." Stalin. You obviously know who Joseph Stalin is. Totalitarian dictator, murdered almost as many people as Mao did, horrific human being. You know that. And Stalin controlled everything, didn't he? Stalin controlled the news. Stalin controlled the arts. Stalin controlled the economy. Every single thing was managed. Nobody was allowed to step out of line. But did you know there was an opposition party? An opposition party to Stalin? Did you know that he allowed it? He encouraged it? And in fact, he organized it? Now, why would he do that? Why would this human being who organized and controlled everything censored, everything is run through Stalin, why would he allow an opposition party? They even would make some public statements that disagreed with Stalin. Stalin would kill his own family members for disagreeing with him, and he allowed an opposition party to do that? Why would he do that? Well, because the people needed to be placated. Every tyrant knows instinctively that he can abuse the people, he can abuse the people around him, he can do whatever he wants to a point. But you can't get the people too mad. Just make sure they don't ever dial it up to 11. Turn it down a little bit. You have to placate them with something. No, it's not one-party rule here in the Soviet Union. What? Look, the opposition party's right there. You have options for sure. What's going on with Hunter Biden? With the Hunter Biden sweetheart deal? Well, what's going on is the system has witnessed your anger. They're very aware of how angry you are, that there is no justice system for the elites, certainly the elite Democrats. They all get off scot-free. If you're Donald Trump, if you're a Republican, they're going to lock you in a cage forever. If you're a Democrat, do whatever you want. They know you're mad. They've seen you be mad. They closely monitor social media. They're listening to all of our phone calls, after all. They know you're angry. They understand that. And they know you're getting a little too angry. Man, the people are getting spicy. How do we dial that down a bit? Well, how you dial it down a bit is you bust Hunter Biden. You say, yeah, Hunter Biden's a criminal. Man, I can't believe this tax stuff. Whoa! And that gun charge? Ugh. You know what? He's going to have to enter a plea deal. But while we weren't looking, everything kind of got swept up inside of that plea deal, and they washed it all away. You see, Hunter Biden is not just a tax evader. Hunter Biden is a felon, and so is his father. These are human beings who've used their position of power to take bribes from foreign entities to enrich themselves and sell out the United States of America. By all rights, Hunter Biden should never see the outside of a prison cell again. And if you or I did what Hunter Biden did, we would not. We'd be in Fort Leavenworth for the rest of our lives. But they know they can't do that. And they also can't just let him off scot-free. Hey, he's innocent, because no one would believe that. So what do? They pat you on the head and they say, look, we got him, guys. We got him. You remember that child custody case? He was going through in Arkansas, the stripper he knocked up, and then, of course, he ran out on her, abandoned his child. He's a real quality human being. And then he was going through a civil case there. And this civil case was supposed to be the case where all his lies were exposed, because we were going to get to dig into all of his finances. But while you were sleeping, all that went away too. Finished, gone. Joe Biden was asked about it and gave the same canned, meaningless answer he always has.
I'm very proud of my son.
Very proud. He's very proud of his son. Very proud of. What does that mean? Well, Joe Biden understands exactly how this game works. Remember when he was asked about it time and time again on the campaign trail? And what did he say? Time and time again. No one said he did anything wrong. Who said he did anything wrong? What does that mean? I mean, it's nothing. Everyone said he did something wrong. What are you talking about? But Joe understands that we live in a late-stage republic, a completely corrupt system, and he'll be allowed to give these canned answers, and he'll have the entire U.S. media out there running cover for him like they have been doing.
And it shows that no one is above the law, which is important, not even the president's son.
The fact that son of the president was investigated by the government and charged is actually evidence that no one is above the law in America. That's a good thing.
Obviously, you're already hearing a lot of shouting, oh, sweetheart deal, oh, this, oh, that.
This is not a sweetheart deal. It's a deal. I think it's a good deal for Hunter Biden in that he will stay out of prison and end up with only 2 misdemeanors on his record. But it's certainly not a sweetheart deal out of line with what happens in the rest of the country.
They focus on this and say, oh, my God, 2-tier standard of justice. He got a sweetheart deal. And you're like, guys, I mean, you just sound like morons.
And yet, if this wasn't Hunter Biden, it is likely he wouldn't have been prosecuted at all.
It indicates that the prosecutor's gone out of his way to charge everything that could have been charged.
He went out of his way to charge everything that could have been charged. Is that a fact? Well, that's funny because I remember, maybe you remember this too, I remember this laptop. I remember Hunter Biden had a laptop. Do you remember this? Hunter Biden had a laptop. And because he's a degenerate and has serious mental problems, he not only commits an endless amount of crimes, he records all of them. Hunter Biden apparently has never committed a crime that he doesn't want to record on his phone or wherever he records it. And not only does he record all of his crimes, he uploads all of them onto his laptop. That alone is wild. But then, this is the best part, Hunter Biden, with the criminal laptop, the laptop with evidence of all of his crimes, he then takes it down to a computer repair shop and says, hey, update the hard drive or something or whatever he told them, and just kind of left it there, just forgot about it. And computer repair shops all have this disclaimer that they get to take possession of your laptop if you leave it there for so long, they never hear from you. And he just left it there, and soon this computer guy gets a hold of all these crimes of Hunter Biden, and he understandably calls the FBI and says, the son of the vice president, then Vice President Joe Biden, is a felon, and I have all the evidence here. And the FBI says, oh my goodness, that's terrible. Hang on, let's go check that out. 2019, the FBI went down and took possession of Hunter Biden's laptop containing evidence of his crimes and his father's crimes. Now, whatever did happen to that laptop, whatever did happen to it, are they still looking into it? Well, here's Hunter Biden's lawyer.
Do you have any idea if Hunter Biden's laptop had anything to do with this investigation? Was it used?
I don't. No, I don't. I mean,
were you ever asked about it?
I can't recall being asked about it, to be honest with you. But there's nothing about the situation that's been filed that has a thing to do with the laptop.
Why not?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the prosecutors.
They didn't even ask about it. Laptop? What? Ha! Never heard of her. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right.
My colleagues and I understand the hardship that high inflation is causing, and we remain strongly committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal. Nearly all FOMC participants expect that it will be appropriate to raise interest rates somewhat further by the end of the year. But at last week's meeting, considering how far and how fast we've moved, we judged it prudent to hold the target range steady to allow the committee to assess additional information and its implications for monetary policy.
That's a lot of big words. We better find out what those mean. Let's talk to somebody smart. Joining me now, William Luther. He's the director at the American Institute for Economic Research. He's also an associate professor. This just has to be the best job in the world. Associate professor of economics at Florida Atlantic. Professor, you're at Florida Atlantic University, so you get to teach, and you're also on the beach. Do I have that right?
That's right. It's like 1.5 miles from the beach.
All right, those were big words. What was Jerome Powell talking about? Are my rates going up? Are they not going up? Is inflation coming down? Break all this down for us.
Well, let's start with the good news. Inflation is coming down. If you were to go back a year ago, inflation very high. That's really when the Fed started tightening monetary policy. It raised interest rates meeting after meeting after meeting until this most recent meeting in June when it paused those rate hikes. Now, I think a lot of folks were hoping that maybe they would pause them and hold them there for a while and then eventually bring them back down once inflation has gone down. But what Fed officials are telling us is that rate hikes are likely to resume, most likely in July, and we can expect 2 further 25 basis point rate hikes this year.
Okay, so interest rates are going up. If inflation's going down, as you just said, then why are they still raising interest rates? Because interest rates only are supposed to be raised if we're trying to control inflation.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that Fed officials they're looking at core inflation. Core inflation excludes food and energy prices, and core inflation has been flat since December. And I think that they're concerned that suggests that although we're getting some disinflation right now, that's going to stall out and we're not going to make it all the way back to 2% inflation if they don't continue raising rates. Now, I think that's misguided. I think that the reason that core inflation is flat has a lot to do with how the housing component of that core inflation measure is calculated. In brief, we're not really looking, only at the housing increases in recent months, but those much larger housing price increases from months ago, a year ago. And so that overstates core inflation today. And if we were to strip that out, we would see that core inflation coming down as well.
Okay, so you're Fed chairman today. How do you handle this? How do you go forward? What do you want to do?
Well, if I were Fed chair today and had been for a few years, then I certainly would have conducted policy differently up until this point. The Fed got a very late start, and so inflation got way too high and lasted way too long. But at this point in the tightening cycle, rates are sufficiently restrictive. Inflation is coming down. And so the Fed today should just hold rates where they are and watch that inflation come down. And as it does come down, start to lower those rates back down as well. That's what I would be doing.
I saw a sign the other day. I was in Salt Lake City for a book tour thing, and I saw a sign. They were advertising rates that were over 6% for a mortgage. I'm paying 2.25 on mine, and my jaw about dropped. So they're bragging about it. Hey, come get over 6%. And then I saw Jerome Powell say this about interest rate cuts.
We're having real rates that are going to have to be meaningfully positive and significantly so for us to get inflation down. That probably means that certainly means that it will be appropriate to cut rates at such time as inflation is coming down really significantly. And again, we're talking about a couple years out.
We're a couple years? We have to deal with these rates for a couple years?
Yeah, we're in a difficult position, a position that we shouldn't be in, a position we wouldn't be in if the Fed had acted back in December of 2021. But it didn't act then. It drug its feet for 6 months. And so we got ourselves into a very difficult position here where inflation has been high and as a result is harder to bring down. And so that's going to take some time. The important thing to focus on, of course, is actually bringing that inflation down. That inflation makes it much harder for workers to experience real wage gains due to productivity. They see their wages eaten away over the course of the year by inflation, and then they have to engage in costly renegotiations to get those wages back up. And it would be better if we could just avoid that. And so we need to focus on that, bringing inflation down. The Fed's in a good position to do that now, and it's just going to have to stay the course here to see that happen.
Okay, you mentioned inflation's coming down, and that's a good thing. I know their target is 2%. I know everybody watching right now would very much like the value of their money to return. When do we get there? Is that coming next month? Is it a year? Are we going to have to live like this for 2 decades? When do we get back to that?
So the Fed is currently projecting 3.1% inflation for 2023. Inflation in 2024 will be a bit lower, or I believe around 2.5% they're projecting, and then around 2.1% there in 2025. So they're projecting that we're going to get closer and closer to that 2% target. But of course, even when we get back to that 2% target, that just means that we experience a mild reduction in the purchasing power of money from year to year, as opposed to the extraordinary reduction in the purchasing power of money that we've seen over the last 2.
Oh, wonderful. Professor, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We're coming up on a wonderful anniversary. The Roe versus Wade getting the snip anniversary. We'll talk to a pro-life activist about that in just a moment. Before we do that, let's talk about your health. Let's talk about the air you breathe. Great Holly's song, by the way. But let's talk about the air you breathe. We have viruses and mold in our air. There are smells in your air, in your home, in your office. We put off smells. Dogs put off smells. Cooking puts off smells. It just happens. Why don't you start cleaning the air in your home, in your office? Eden Pure Thunderstorm will clean your air for you. There's no filter to replace. They call it a thunderstorm because it will do inside of your home, in your bedroom, in your kids' room, in your living room, in your kitchen, the same thing nature does after a thunderstorm. That's why you walk outside and it smells so clean. Go get 3 Eden Pure Thunderstorms because they sell 3 packs of them, $200 off, and experience a difference. EdenPureDeals.com, code Jesse is how you get that 3-pack. EdenPureDeals.com, code Jesse, all right? We'll be back.
I would love to know first how you felt, not only as the first woman Vice President of the United States, but also as a former prosecutor, as a mamala to 2 lovelies, as an auntie, as a woman, as an American, to that moment when you knew that Roe was gone.
And I immediately knew when that decision came down what it would mean for real people almost immediately in our country, who, for the most part, many will suffer in silence and are alone and without resources of many types. And I was extremely sad for that reason as well when that decision came down. Angry, and extremely sad about what it would mean for real people.
Yeah, she didn't care. Of all the versions of Kamala we get to see on a daily basis, the earnest Kamala who really cares about people, they had to suffer in silence, has to be the least genuine. And that's saying something for maybe the least genuine politician I've ever seen in my life, which is also saying something. Joining me now, Christina Bennett, live action correspondent, pro-life activist, which we, of course, love on this show. Christina, obviously these Democrats all have to pay lip service to how wonderful abortion is, which what a horrible thing to pay lip service to, but abortion is not wonderful at all, is it?
It's not. And if we're going to talk about suffering in silence, like our vice president said in that clip. Unborn children suffer in silence when they are killed in the womb, and no one can hear their cry for help. When they are poisoned through chemical abortion pills, when they are torn apart by forceps and instruments, when they are burned alive in the womb, they are suffering in silence. And I am grateful that Roe versus Wade was overturned, because that is an act of justice towards them. So of course, we know we need to continue to fight it on a state level.
I don't think a lot of people know, because this is sanitized by both political parties, by the media, by everybody. I don't think a lot of people know what you just said, that the baby suffers, that it's not some painless thing and then it's gone and the clump of cells has been disappeared. That's not how it is at all, is it?
It's not. And not only does a child suffer when they are being torn apart in the womb, but in many instances, the mother suffers as well, whether that's a botched abortion when fetal remains are left inside of her, or whether she's had a quote unquote successful abortion, but she's left with regret and pain, sorrow and shame, sometimes for years and years to come. Not only women experience this, but men as well. Men will also speak about their abortion regret. So will grandparents who their daughters and sons have participated in abortion. And so it truly causes suffering, of course, primarily to the unborn child who's being killed, but it also emotionally causes suffering to women and men and our families and our entire society. We all suffer when children are killed in the womb.
Tell me about your story. I love your story. Tell people about it.
Thank you. My mother scheduled to abort me at Mount Sinai Hospital in Hartford, Connecticut in 1981. And miraculously, a janitor saved my life. An African-American janitor saw my mom crying in the hospital hallway. She'd already paid for the abortion. She was wearing a white hospital robe. She was about to have the procedure. This janitor approached her, looked her in the eyes, and said, "Do you want to have this baby?" My mom said yes, and she said, "God will give you the strength." Now, she told my mom to leave, but my mom was starting to leave, and the abortionist called her into his office, and there was blood on the floor from the last child that he had killed. And she was so disgusted, and she said, "I'm leaving. I changed my mind." And he said, "No, you've already paid for this." That's where his mindset was: money, business, you've already paid for this. And she insisted, I want to keep my baby, I'm leaving. And he screamed at her. He said, "Don't leave this room." But she ran out of the room, and she ended up holding it in her heart as a secret for over 20 years. And when I was in college, I discovered that my life was saved at the 11th hour. And that really thrust me into pro-life work, because I grew up in a family where I'd never heard abortion talked about at home. And I grew up going to public school. I'd never heard abortion talked about in a negative way at school. And I never heard it talked about in church. I'm from Connecticut, so it's a very progressive pro-abortion state. And so this was an eye-opening moment for me. It changed everything when I heard that story.
How about that? I love that story.
Thank you.
What's next for us? Obviously, we're thrilled. I'm thrilled. You're thrilled. Roe versus Wade is overturned. What are our next steps? Where do we go from here? Because obviously the mission, the goal is no more abortions in this country ever. Not something I'll see in my lifetime or you, but that's the goal. What's next?
Well, 13 to 14 states have, banned abortion, but there are many other states that have not, Connecticut being one of them, California, obviously, and other pro-abortion states. And so we need to be talking to our elected officials in these particular states. We need to be fighting against abortion expansion. In my state of Connecticut, they're trying to expand abortion in every possible way they can, allowing nurses, allowing midwives to do it. They're attacking pregnancy resource centers. So you need to know the names of your state representatives and your state senators, and to be on the local level fighting against abortion expansion. On the national level, many leaders are going to Washington, D.C. this weekend, because this Saturday is going to be the 1-year anniversary of Roe being overturned. And at Live Action, we are calling for our congressmen, we are calling for them to allow the 14th Amendment to truly not only protect all citizens, but protect the unborn children as well, who are also citizens of this country. And so we are fighting for amendment and legislation that would really protect children in the womb on a federal level, in every single state that they'd be protected. It's wrong for there to be pro-life states and pro-abortion states, just like it was wrong in the days of slavery for there to be anti-slavery states and pro-slavery states. That made for a divided nation where some people received justice and other people did not. We want every state in this country to be a state where children in the womb are protected, and where we can acknowledge that the 14th Amendment includes them as well, that they are citizens and that they have a right to justice and a right to life and to liberty. And so those are some of the ways that we are fighting back. But I would just encourage every person to not only celebrate the victory of Roe, but to continue to work hard until we see legal protection for children across the board.
Amen. It's always been one of my favorite arguments when people say leave it up to the states. I love asking people, so you think they would be okay to own black people in Georgia? You'd be okay with that now? And just watch them just freeze. It's wonderful. Christina,
Right.
You are the best. Keep doing what you do.
Thank you so much. God bless.
You too. All right, it's time to lighten the mood. But before we lighten the mood, let's talk about ourselves. We want to save the country. You do, I do, we all do, right? We can't save the country until we save our state. Can't save our state till we save our community. Can't save our community till we save our neighborhood. And we can't save our neighborhood until we deal with ourselves first. We need to take better care of ourselves, all of us. And I'm not pointing fingers at you, believe me, myself too. I'm making improvements. I'm eating better, drinking more water, working out more. But there's always more we can do. Chalk is part of my lifestyle now. It should be part of yours. Not just because they're the most hardcore anti-communists I know, but because they have natural herbal supplements. We must break ourselves away from this industry in this country and start taking care of ourselves in natural ways. Chalk is the way we get to do that. And they offer 35% off everything on their website for the lifetime of your subscription. I take a male vitality stack. Ladies take female vitality stacks, but it's much more than just that. Go see what they have at Chalk, CHOQ. Watch how different you feel. Give it 90 days, whatever you start on, and watch how different you feel. CHOQ.com, promo code Jesse, all right? We'll be back. All right, it is time to lighten the mood. And nothing lightens my mood more than watching communists get humiliated. And there's nothing more despicable than a Democrat member of the House of Representatives, because they're all embarrassing communists. And not only that, they're all really, really dumb. I find it inspiring to watch them question people who are intelligent, because their stupidity comes through the screen, and it reminds me that we can beat these people. We really can. So Durham sat in front of them today and embarrassed many of them.
You had a good reputation. That's why the two Democrats supported you. But the longer you hold on to Mr. Barr and this report that Mr. Barr gave you as special counsel, your reputation will be damaged. As everybody's reputation who gets involved with Donald Trump is damaged, he's damaged goods. There's no good dealing with him, because you will end up on the bottom of a pyre.
My concern about my reputation is with the people who I respect, and my family and my Lord. And I'm perfectly comfortable with my reputation with them, sir.
Really, this son of a presidential candidate gets calls all the time from foreign government offering dirt on their opponent? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think this is unique in your experience.
Wow, that's beautiful. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.